Welcome to Patty's Aquatics and welcome to my fish room. So today what I want to do is another video in my series, The Truth About Dirty Tanks. Now, I have absolutely loved making this series of videos for you guys, really looking and taking a deep dive into the different components of a dirty tank. And I have plenty other ideas in the future for this series as well. But really, truth be told, I have been doing so much research in each one of these little videos that I've been doing that I have been learning so much more than I thought I already knew. And really that's going to lead us into this video as well. You know, in past videos, I'd always tell you when it comes to Mulm And Detritus, really, well, we know how it's made: uneaten fish food, fish waste, broken down plant matter, things of that nature create that Mulm And Detritus. It gets broken down more by the organisms in your aquarium, and then it works its way down through that sand cap to reach that sponge-like soil layer where it soaks up all those nutrients to feed your plants. But really the real question I always ask myself is really, how does that Mulm And Detritus really work its way down through that sand to reach that soil layer? That's the research I did and I want to share with you today, and that's what we're going to talk about. So my assumptions always have been that Mulm And Detritus always worked its way down through the sand cap, really from gravity, from water circulation, whether it's from flow or from water changes, and then from just basically over time. But the other thing to think about as well is really sand is so compact. You know, it's not like gravel. Gravel has always got those cavities where that Mulm And Detritus can really fall through and work its way down easier, where sand, it compacts over time as well. I got a little bit of a visual demonstration to show you that maybe help with this. Well, to give you a visual aid, this is a fine filter that I have here, the sponge. This is going to represent your sand cap, which is very similar to sand, as in that it is small holes, it's compact, not a lot of things can fall through it. Now the sand that I have on top will represent the Mulm And Detritus that collects on top of that sand cap. Now, as you can see, there is nothing falling through this little filter, you know, and it's very similar to an aquarium. When that mulm collects on top of the sand, it's not going to fall through. Now, yes, like I mentioned earlier, the gravity, water flow, and time, it can eventually work its way down through this sand itself, but it's not a guarantee for one, and I don't think there would ever be enough of that really getting pulled down through there to really feed your plants into that soil layer. So how does it get down there? Well, the answer to that is really what I found in my research. First off, plant roots. As plants grow and those root systems grow, they're going to not only oxygenate the substrate, but they are going to eventually start to help pull that Mulm And Detritus down through that sand cap to reach that soil layer. But now really speaking of pulling the Mulm And Detritus down, that's where I found the real answer to the questions I was looking for here, and that is those beautiful yet creepy organisms that live within your aquarium. All that fauna and microfauna that live within your aquarium, that's what does it. That's what pulls that Mulm And Detritus down through that sand cap to that soil layer. I'm talking about snails, I'm talking about detritus worms, all those little microorganisms that live in that biologically active substrate, constantly moving, constantly churning, constantly eating, and that's pulling that down through the substrate to that soil layer. Now, there is one critter that I did find in my research that I found that is probably the pinnacle, the unwritten hero really of a dirty tank that must be added in my opinion, and that is a Malaysian trumpet snail. Now think about it, guys. These snails, they burrow in your substrate. They burrow and they are constantly pulling down this Mulm And Detritus to that soil layer. They're pulling it down, they're devouring, they're eating that substrate and mulm, digesting it, and creating more nutrients for your plants to eat off of. Now, like I said, Malaysian trumpet snails, in my opinion, are probably one of the most important things that you can add to a dirty tank if you're looking for this process of getting this Mulm And Detritus to your soil layer. So now that I figured out really the answer to how Mulm And Detritus really works its way down through that sand cap, the next thing was I really had a bunch of questions that I wanted to answer in my research to get a little better understanding of the entire process. And one of them was, how do you get this microfauna and fauna into your aquarium for this process to work? Does it appear naturally, or is it something you have to introduce? Now, Obviously, Malaysian trumpet snails you can introduce to your aquarium. They will do a large part of that for you. You could introduce even shrimp. Just shrimp and Malaysian trumpet snails, in my opinion, would probably work just itself. The shrimp are going to be able to work on breaking down all that material on the surface, and the Malaysian trumpet snails will help with that at night because they are nocturnal, but yet they're going to dig and burrow and bring that stuff down into your soil layer eventually. You can add microfauna and organisms to your aquarium. Now, I put a video out, one of my last Truth About Dirty Tanks, about resurrection jars in the food web. I don't recommend taking from the wild resurrection jars and pouring them into your aquariums immediately. I would really more stress on culturing organisms before you do that, but adding something to your aquarium, whether you're buying it from a local source or doing it yourself, adding some microfauna to your aquarium will help speed that process up. And the other thing I found with it doing it naturally, if you don't add anything, there is a possibility that that microlife will start to develop and become biologically active substrate over time, but it greatly enhances your odds of being able to do it and do it at a faster rate if you introduce something. Now, like I said, you don't have to be crazy and throw things in from the wild. You can just put Malaysian trumpet snails and shrimp in your tank, and that probably would suffice itself. But now, time frames was another question I had. How long does it really take for this Mulm And Detritus to work its way down to that soil layer? Now, I got some differing time numbers when it came to that. Now, if you don't add fauna into your aquarium and you try to do it naturally, it can take upwards to a year plus if it happens at all. But that's only if those organisms do appear in your aquarium naturally. Now, if you add fauna to an aquarium, like snails and shrimp and all those different little crazy things you would put in there, that speeds up that cycle. You're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 months before you start to actually potentially get this Mulm And Detritus to start working to that soil layer. So one other question I did really ask myself was really, is a sand cap truly the better cap then if it's more compact, it's harder for that Mulm And Detritus to work its way down compared to, say, gravel? I've used both caps before in the past. And, again, kind of rethinking, relearning the way that I'm trying to do things with my dirty tanks here. And the research I did found that, well, gravel is more porous, obviously. The Mulm And Detritus is going to be able to work down through those pockets much easier. But at the same time, it's not going to be able to really compact that dirt layer as well. So you're going to have more possibilities of things leaching into your water column and giving you more water parameter issues potentially. At least that's what the research said. Secondly, obviously the sand cap, it's going to hold that dirt in much better. It's really going to hold those nutrients and everything within that soil layer a little better. So I still think sand is probably the better option. But really, after like doing all this research, really, and thinking back to my puffer tank, I did put a video out about that. I got rid of the dirt. I just put sand substrate in there because I was battling so much with algae. My plants weren't growing. Then I started really thinking after doing all this research, is this part of the reason why that tank was unsuccessful? I have a big puffer in there that eats any snail that goes in there. I was constantly vacuuming the surface of that sand to get that cyanobacteria out of there. There really was no option for any type of life to really grow in there. No snails, nothing to really help pull that Mulm And Detritus down through that sand layer to reach that dirt. So that could have been a contributing factor. It may not have been the only factor of why it was happening, but I'm thinking it was a possible contributing factor to why that tank was happening the way that it was as well, which I kind of found a little interesting. So in conclusion, from all the research I did, what did I find? I found that sand itself does not pull Mulm And Detritus down through itself to that soil layer. It needs something to pull it down through it. Obviously, like I said, microfauna, fauna, shrimp, snails, all that good stuff. Roots of plants. Yes, gravity, time, water flow will help facilitate that a little bit, but you need help. You need those organisms. You need a biologically active substrate, and that is the biggest thing to help facilitate this, to continuously fuel your soil with this Mulm And Detritus. Now, the last thing that kind of popped into my head after doing all this research really was, if by 68 months, even up to a year, you can have Mulm And Detritus continuously going into your soil and feeding your plants, why do you need to buy additives for your soil then? Ask yourself that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video here. I hope maybe you learned a little something about this. I know I learned quite a bit. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And as always, remember to think outside the box and take a step back into nature. I hope to see you next time here at Patty's Aquatics.